you doing today, sir?
Good. I'm good. How are you? How are you and your 3 trillion viewers?
We have at least 5 readers, and they're doing good.
Yeah. They are doing good, personally?
Yeah, I call all of them.
You call them up individually. Hey, guys. Hey, ladies. Guys, can you watch this, please?
Let's jump into why I get to talk to you today.
Yeah, all right.
You have a movie in Sundance, which is really, really cool. Talk a little bit, for the thing about this interview is that usually people know what you're promoting, like they've heard of the movie, but this is one of those.
Well, I assume that's if you're talking to like your George Clooney's of the world, people know what they're promoting, but I assume like also at Sundance you get a cat like me, like who's that guy, A and B, what movie, I don't know. So it's called The Games Maker.
Right.
It's a fantasy, kind of a bit of a surreal, a good bit of surrealism on the go with this thing. Fantastical story, essentially, based on the book The Games Maker, the Spanish language book The Games Maker, very popular book in South America, which we took, and I believe Disney is associated with it, and turned into a movie starring a young fella, David Mazouz, who's brilliant. It's annoying too because he's like 14.
Yeah.
And he's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, you really kind of want him to be like, yeah, not bad for a kid, but instead he's just not bad at all. He's just good. So I find that, as a jealous person, I find that very annoying. Yeah.
Well, talk a little bit about how you got involved in the project. Was it something that came through agents? They sent you the script, or?
Yeah, they backed up the money truck, which is how I pick all my projects, essentially.
Right. I got
it. No, they. It was a script through the agents, and it was a combination of factors. One significant factor was that it filmed in Argentina, and that seemed like that would be a very cool thing to do, and it was. A kind of a nice, like I say, a nice tale. I wouldn't say that I figure prominently in it, although I guess part of the storyline is the young boy has an incredible ability to make up like games, and in this day of gaming, that's kind of like an attractive characteristic. I think people will like that, but it's kind of like got an old school feel to it, the way he would like make up board games and this kind of thing. But they're all precursors for this thing, right? And so sort of our games are kind of a signifier in that way. And then his father, though, that I play, hates that because of a history through him and his own father, which gets unveiled, and then it becomes from that moment, it then becomes his father gets kidnapped or disappeared, and we don't know what, and then he has to go find his father, and it just becomes like balloon chases and Shark Tanks and craziness. Joe Fiennes plays, and he's brilliant, and so it's. I think it's entertaining. I think it's fun. What more can one want?
I'm very curious about your process as an actor and how it's changed over the years. Is there a certain thing you do for every project? Is it sort of like, or do you talk a little bit about the way you like to work?
I respect and like you, and so I'm probably going to try and answer that question honestly, but if I didn't, I would say, I do this TV show, The Flash, and I play a dangerous character in The Flash, and last week at the TCAs, the Television Critics Award, they asked, talk about your process. The same sort of question. And I was like, anytime you ask an actor about the process that they go through when they're playing a character, the danger is that you might get an honest answer.
Right.
And you might be sitting here half an hour later going,
he's still talking about his process.
You know what I mean? So I'll try and make it brief for you. But my answer then at the Television Critics Awards was essentially, I show up, hit my mark, and say the line that they gave me to say. It's obviously there's more to it than that, but I think every character you play, like in The Flash, I'm not a genius, superhero suit wearing crazy guy in real life, but it's you borrow a couple of things and jump in. In this instance, I'm not like in a surreal world with all these crazy things that can happen in the Games Maker, but there's a lot of things in your life you borrow from, and that's your starting point. You just jump in, and see, now you asked me about my process. I'm kind of talking about it, and to me, it seems like death of the interview. It seems so bloody boring.
Well, no,
ask me something different.
Sure. Yeah. I was just curious how you've changed though. From when you first started, because a lot of actors I've spoken to, they say like at the beginning they would do just crazy research, and after you've been doing a number of things, it's like you've sort of figured out what you need, and it's so much more abbreviated.
I see. That's a good question. No, I think it definitely hasn't ever changed for me. Very, very briefly, without talking about all the steps that get there. So I started essentially doing like a decade of theater only. Like I just wasn't offered. It wasn't that I didn't want to, but I wasn't offered movies or film. And I was doing theater, did some Broadway, and along the way, I discovered as a young guy, we're talking like 1940 essentially when I started. And I was
thinking the 30s.
I'm not that old, Steve.
Right.
Jesus.
Again?
It's really cool of you, I feel. And I found out that, and I found out even before people were paying me to do it, that I didn't have it, and then something clicked here, and I suddenly could enter into the character. There's this great quote by Brando who said, you know, you build the cage, and once you've built that cage, you can do anything you want inside the cage, which always struck me as, so you can see guys like, you know, like Pacino, you know, for example, who's like, "Ah, what are you doing, Steve?" You know, and you're just like, how's he getting away with going, "She's got a great ass"? How's he getting away with doing that? And the reason is he built the cage, and this is the guy. It's the guy, you know. And if you do that, you know, if you build like a strong enough cage and people see it, they will enter into it with you. I know that sounds lame when I say it. Brando said it much better, clearly, obviously, but kind of borrow from that, and I unwittingly backed into or went into that when I was a young guy. And so for me, every character is a thing. It's like, and you can have some agonizing times in rehearsals where you're like, nothing's centered, you know, and then you get it, and then you're into that guy, and you're doing that character, and then you're out, and then you're in, you know. And so it's about building that, and that, you know, clearly actors will tell you it's that getting to that centered point with characters. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes you snap right in, and other times it takes forever, and sometimes your performance is crappy because of that, but yeah, that's always been the way, and it hasn't in the last 20 years. I don't think that's any different.
Let's jump into a very successful TV show that you're on, The Flash. As I said to you off camera, I'm a big fan of the show. I thought that Arrow Flash crossover was great, and I'm incredibly impressed with what you guys have managed to accomplish in the first season. What has it been like being a part of the show, and what's been the big surprise for you?
I consider myself essentially a neophyte in that world, so it's been exciting in many ways. You know, like the graphic novel, the superhero genre has kind of taken off in the last decade, I guess, maybe less than that. And you know, it used to be the domain of the big screen. It seemed, you know, if done well, at least 6-7 years ago, and you'd sit there in the theater and go, that must be awesome to do. To put on that suit and do that kind of stuff. Somehow the technology got good enough and cheap enough that you could do it on television. Like I said to you earlier, you couldn't do this show 5 years ago, I don't think. You can't do The Flash without on speed effects. Or if you do that with a cheaper speed effect, you're then asking the viewer saying, can you just step outside and believe that this is happening? And anytime you do that, even though the viewer in the comic book genre, I found that in the graphic novel, people are extremely faithful. So the faithful will go along with that. But if you can manage to not ask them to pay off the stuff we've earned in the bank and just say, look, this looks good and looks believable, then that's amazing, you know. And I find that's one of the coolest things about doing The Flash is they have, you know, effects teams, effects people who are on set doing such an incredible job, and then effects houses. You know, the VFX of it is just, it really helps pull you along. Then you have, for me, you know, I have to wear this yellow suit as, you know, the Reverse Flash yellow suit. And, you know, when they first asked me to do this thing, and like we were talking, I've done a number of shows with these guys before. So I know they're great and honest, and they're like, we want you to be like this guy. I'm like, I don't know if that's going to be good for anybody's eyeballs and the network at all if I'm getting into a spandex suit. And then, of course, nowadays, you know, with apologies to Adam West and the gang back in the day, the suits are unbelievably cool. Like, you see that, there was an unveiling of Ben Affleck's Batman suit, you know,
sure.
And the process of making the suit for me was just, it was incredible. And you know, you're basically tapping into your 14-year-old self. It's just now you get to, instead of getting that thing, wearing some yellow spandex that you found somewhere in the garage, you're suddenly, I don't know what you'd have spandex in the garage for, but
everyone
does. I guess they do. Yeah. And then you'd have you've got these muscles and the thing, and it's leather, and it's just cool. That has been one of the singular and most cool experiences I've ever had in television.
What's amazing about the show is how much they breeze through story. They just churn through. When you signed on, and as the show was going, did they tell you really like where this was all going to be going, or has it sort of been an exploration as the scripts have been coming in?
Andrew Kreisberg, Craig Berlanti, Jeff Johns, these guys, and having done shows with Greg, they lay it out for you. They seem like they're very loyal, they're very trusting, and they tell you what's happening. But you and I were talking, when you do a pilot and the pilot goes, the temptation often, what I've found, is that, well, we better repeat the pilot because people seem to like the pilot. That's why we're here, and then ends up being like there's a similarity just doing that as the season progresses. With these guys, no, and it comes down to their respect for what they're doing, because Jeff, Greg, and Andrew love The Flash. They love the story. Jeff Johns is the keeper of the flame right now, The Flash, and so for these guys, and two of the shows that I've done with Greg were canceled almost before their time, and I think everybody's very realistic about it. We might not, as before the show opens, nothing's promised to us. We could be 7 episodes and out. That happens more often than not. And so I think for these guys, they're like, look, if we're just going to get one kick at this can, if it's only going to last 7 episodes, 13 episodes, one season, because you never know, nothing's promised to you, we want to have something that will sit on our desk and we can be proud of. And so as the season progresses, they're like, you know what? Captain Cold, episode 4, Plastique, Man in the Yellow Suit. We're getting these things out there to the point where I said to Greg, episode 7, as I was telling you, I was like, are we at all worried about story? And his response verbatim, always more story. And what's nice is for every episode, I feel like for the graphic novel fan, for the comic book genre, it's just every episode is an opening of that, and has resolution, has all the action, has everything, just the way the pilot did. And so it doesn't make it easy to do, but we're certainly not coasting.
Greg has mentioned in the rumor mill says that assuming Supergirl gets picked up, which I'm very optimistic it would with the popularity of the comic book genre, is it something that you are already thinking about, just wow, we can do Arrow meets Flash meets Supergirl, we can do this crossover almost between networks? You know what I mean? Yeah,
I completely know what you mean. Not me. No, I am not thinking about that. But I'm sure they are. And I'm sure Supergirl, I don't know how Supergirl doesn't go. I'm not trying to jinx them or anything, but it's so that seems like the next logical step. You take a big name, you take a female idea, and you do what you're doing, something dark, something crazy, a Genesis kind of thing. And I think that would be very, very cool. And I know those guys will do it well. If you're familiar with that world, the cross-pollination really excites you. Yeah. If you're unfamiliar with that world, you're just like, what? Wow, what? I was amazed at how good a job they did at the Flash versus Arrow, our episode. I just thought, they have them fighting, they have both teams pulling for their guy, and then ends up with a resolution that doesn't piss either group off, and it was well done. I think there's danger when you jump into that because it's such high concept, like you said, but it's great that they're going for it.
Well, the thing is, it's amazing that the episodes are so good, especially with the production schedule where you're churning out. You got to be writing and churning and writing and acting and nonstop.
I told you. So Grant Gustin plays the Flash. I'm going to assume all your billion viewers kind of knew that already.
Yeah.
Just for my mom. Grant Gustin plays the Flash Mom, and at one, it's this is not just a scene where Steve and Tom sit, and I put a camera on Steve and I put a camera on Tom. This is if we're talking, we're on a bridge and on top of a bridge, and there's a storm coming, and one of us is vibrating. So there's effects, there's the background, there's a whole. So it's not an easy show to shoot, and the directors come in, and this is what they do. Yeah, I'm directing The Flash. Cut to a day later. They're just holy. It's just so much to do. And so for us, generally, when we shoot, we're always shooting a second unit, and we're shooting our main unit, and then we're generally shooting the episode that we shot last week. Totally. And then when we were shooting Arrow, we were also doing that. So at one point, Grant comes in. He's like, "So I'm doing 4 units today. I'm doing last week's episode, I'm doing this week's episode, I'm doing second unit, I'm doing the current Flash episode." It's an undertaking, and I think what's great about our little group is it because it is such a big undertaking? There's two ways you can go, and the way we've gone is proceed from gratitude. I think to a man and a woman, we're all like, we're so grateful to have this job.
100%. I want to thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome.
And
Man.
it's a pleasure to see you again.
No,
And thank you
it's
so
my
much.
pleasure. My pleasure. Absolutely.
Seriously, thank you.
Anytime, you and your billion viewers.
Right, exactly. At least
Yeah,
five.
man.